Stop scrolling. Because if silence makes you uncomfortable, this video is about you. The most powerful people in any room are not the loudest, not the smartest, and not the most aggressive. They are the ones who make others nervous by saying nothing. And if you think silence is weakness, you have already lost position more times than you realize. There is a moment when people stop listening to what you say and start watching what you don't say. That moment is where power shifts. Because silence doesn't calm people, it unsettles them. Not because silence is aggressive, but because silence removes certainty. Most people live inside emotional feedback loops. They speak, they wait for a reaction. They provoke, they expect resistance. They question, they demand explanation. Silence breaks the loop. And when the loop breaks, the nervous system panics. This is why silence makes people uncomfortable. Not bored, not confused, uncomfortable. Because discomfort reveals hierarchy. Machiavelli understood this long before psychology named it. He observed that people don't fear strength, they fear unreadability. When someone cannot read your intentions, they cannot predict your behavior. And when prediction disappears, control disappears with it. This is why silence is misinterpreted as weakness by amateurs and recognized as dominance by those who understand power. Weak people talk to fill space. Strong people let space work for them. Every unanswered question creates tension. Every unreturned reaction creates doubt. Every calm pause forces the other person to project meaning onto you. And projection is where fear is born. Notice something important. When you stay silent, you are not doing nothing. You are forcing the other person to act without information. They don't know if you agree. They don't know if you disapprove. They don't know if you are finished or just waiting. So they start revealing themselves. They speak more. They justify. They backtrack. They over-explain. Silence does not expose you. It exposes them. This is why silence feels dangerous in social situations, because it removes the illusion of equality. Conversation is usually a negotiation of status. Turn-taking creates balance. Explanations create reassurance. Silence destroys balance. The one who remains silent is no longer negotiating. They are observing. And observation is always higher in the hierarchy than reaction. Machiavelli warned that a ruler should never rush to clarify himself, because clarification implies accountability to someone else's judgment. Silence does the opposite. Silence implies that your judgment is final. This is why people become nervous around silent individuals. Not because they are rude, not because they are cold, but because they are uncontrollable. You cannot bait someone who does not respond. You cannot frame someone who does not explain. You cannot dominate someone who refuses to enter your emotional rhythm. And humans instinctively fear what they cannot synchronize with. Silence breaks synchronization. That is its real power. Watch what happens when you answer late, when you pause before responding, when you acknowledge without elaborating. People lean in. Their posture shifts. Their tone softens. Because now they are adjusting to you. This is not confidence. This is dominance without movement. And it is far more unsettling than aggression. Because aggression is predictable. Silence is not. In power dynamics, predictability is safety. Unpredictability is authority. This is why silence doesn't need to threaten. It already does. And this is why those who master silence never need to announce their strength. They let others feel it first. Once people realize your silence isn't weakness, they try something else. They try to break it. This is where the dynamic becomes obvious. Silence unsettles people at first. Unreadability threatens them later. Because silence is temporary. Unreadability is permanent. Silence can be accidental. Unreadability is intentional. And intention is what people fear most. When someone cannot read you, they don't know how to position themselves. They don't know whether to submit, negotiate, or attack. So they begin to probe. They ask questions that aren't questions. They make comments disguised as jokes. They provoke reactions under the cover of curiosity. Not to understand you, but to measure you. This is the moment where most people fail. They mistake the probe for conversation. They respond. They explain. They fill the space. And the moment they do, the test succeeds. Because now they are readable again. Machiavelli warned that power is rarely challenged directly. It is tested quietly, through tone, through timing, through pressure applied in small, deniable ways. Unreadable individuals disrupt this process. When someone asks a question and receives no clear emotional signal, the brain experiences uncertainty. And uncertainty triggers anxiety. People don't need answers to feel safe. They need patterns. Silence destroys patterns. Unreadability removes the feedback loop people rely on to calibrate dominance. They can't tell what pleases you, what offends you, what moves you. So they escalate. This is why people become hostile toward those who remain unreadable. Not because they are rude, but because they are uncontrollable. Control requires prediction. Unreadable behavior blocks prediction at its source. Notice how quickly people label silence as arrogance. That label is a defense mechanism. If silence can be reframed as moral failure, then it no longer threatens hierarchy. But when silence remains calm, neutral, and contained, the label fails. And what remains is exposure. The exposed one is not the silent person. It is the one reacting to silence. They begin to overtalk, over-explain, over-justify. They reveal impatience. They reveal insecurity. They reveal intent. Unreadability turns the spotlight outward. Machiavelli understood that rulers must never allow themselves to become emotionally legible. Once your reactions are predictable, they can be exploited. Once your values are visible, they can be used against you. Once your limits are known, they will be tested. Unreadability protects against all three. It is not deception. It is containment. The unreadable individual does not lie more. They simply leak less. And what does not leak cannot be weaponized. This is why silence alone is not enough. Silence without internal discipline becomes tension. Tension becomes discomfort. Discomfort becomes explanation. Unreadability requires control over the impulse to resolve, the impulse to clarify, the impulse to correct, the impulse to defend your image. That impulse is what others exploit. When you deny it, you deny them leverage. Watch what happens in real interactions. The unreadable person answers late, answers briefly, answers without emotional markers. They don't rush to reassure. They don't rush to clarify tone. They don't rush to repair misunderstandings. Not because they are careless, but because they are not dependent on alignment. Alignment is a form of submission. Unreadability removes that dependency. This is why people try to get a reaction out of you. They raise their voice. They become sarcastic. They challenge openly. Not to win, but to restore predictability. When none comes, the pressure turns inward. They become frustrated. Frustration exposes motive, and motive reveals hierarchy. The one who reacts loses ground. The one who observes gains it. Unreadability changes how people treat you over time. They speak more carefully. They assume less. They hesitate before pushing. Not because you threatened them, but because uncertainty increased the cost of interference. This is the real function of power. Not domination, not intimidation, but deterrence. Machiavelli never advised rulers to be loud. He advised them to be opaque, to reveal strength only when necessary, to reveal intention only when advantageous. Unreadability is the modern expression of that principle. It does not demand attention. It commands distance. In the final part, we will look at what happens when this becomes consistent. Why unreadable people stop being targeted altogether. Why conflict avoids them. And how silence evolves from a tactic into a permanent shift in position. At a certain stage, silence stops being something you use. It becomes something you are. You no longer think about when to respond. You no longer calculate pauses. You no longer decide whether to explain. You simply don't. And that is when silence stops functioning as a tactic and turns into position. Most people never reach this stage. They treat silence as a move, something temporary, something situational. But real power does not operate through moves. It operates through conditions. And the condition that changes everything is when others no longer expect a reaction from you. At first, silence creates tension. People wonder what you're thinking. They wait. They watch. Then silence creates uncertainty. They begin to doubt their assumptions. They replay their own words. They reconsider their tone. Finally, silence creates distance. And distance is the true currency of authority. Not fear, not admiration. Distance. People interfere less when they feel unsure. They test less when outcomes are unclear. They hesitate when they don't know where they stand. Silence produces all three. This is why unreadable individuals are rarely attacked directly. Not because they are stronger, but because engaging with them feels expensive. Every interaction carries risk. Risk of miscalculation. Risk of embarrassment. Risk of escalation without leverage. So people adapt. They become cautious. They choose words carefully. They explain themselves without being asked. This is the quiet reversal most people miss. You don't dominate others by overpowering them. You dominate by making interference costly. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He warned that rulers fall not because they lack strength, but because they allow themselves to become familiar, too accessible, too understandable, too predictable. Once people believe they know how you think, they believe they know how to move you. Unreadability blocks this entirely. It denies access not through deception, but through restraint. The unreadable person does not lie more. They simply reveal less. And what is not revealed cannot be exploited. Over time, this changes how reality organizes around you. People begin to defer without being told. They slow down in your presence. They look for cues before acting. Not because you demanded control, but because your behavior established gravity. Silence creates gravity. It pulls reactions toward itself without pushing outward. Notice the internal shift as well. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop negotiating your identity. You are no longer managing how you are perceived. You are no longer correcting narratives. You are no longer chasing alignment. This creates internal stability. And internal stability is the foundation of composure. Composure is not calmness. It is independence from external validation. Most people are reactive because they are dependent. Dependent on being understood. Dependent on being seen as fair. Dependent on being approved of. That dependency leaks through behavior, through tone, through speed, through over-explanation. Silence seals the leak. It cuts the dependency at the source. This is why silence compounds. Each moment you do not react under pressure raises the cost of testing you again. Each moment you do not explain yourself signals that your position is not up for debate. Each moment you allow misunderstanding to exist without anxiety strengthens your internal authority. Eventually, the environment adjusts. You are no longer pulled into arguments. You are no longer baited into reactions. You are no longer expected to justify. Not because people suddenly respect you, but because they stop seeing an opening. This is the final outcome of quiet dominance. You are not louder than others. You are not more aggressive. You are not constantly asserting control. You are simply immovable. And immovability changes everything. Machiavelli never advised rulers to prove their power. He advised them to preserve it. Silence is preservation. It protects position. It protects leverage. It protects distance. And distance is what keeps authority intact long after words lose their effect. This is the rule most people never learn. Power is not gained by speaking at the right moment. It is gained by knowing when silence is no longer a response, but a permanent state. Remain unreadable.